Johannesburg Mayor Mpho Phalatse has announced her mayoral committee. She says they have achieved a majority coalition arrangement in Johannesburg. It represents a 10-party coalition. 10-party coalition, which in turn represents 136 seats in council. Well, let me take you to eNCA's Govan Whittles, who's been covering that story for us. And Govan, I emphasize the number 10 because we've been mulling over how these coalition arrangements will be reached in the city of Joburg, in Ekurhuleni, as well as the city of Tshwane. It's happened in Joburg. How hard was the journey to this coalition arrangement, according to Mpho Phalatse?
Well, it took 3 weeks, and she says it's been very difficult, especially because some of the parties have continued to revise their demands and been very less likely to accept concessions that the DA wants them to accept. But here we are at the Johannesburg caucus, at the Johannesburg Council, and she's announced this 10-party coalition, but she's only announced 4 of the parties that will be taking up positions in that mayoral committee. You mentioned them. It's the IFP, the DA, the ACDP, as well as Action SA. Action SA undoubtedly scoring the most here, getting control of important portfolios within the city of Johannesburg. And Mpho Phalatse saying that they're not done talking yet. That's why she's not mentioning the other 6. But let's have a look at what she had to say about how tough it was to get this deal together and what it took for them to get here.
It hasn't been easy. We all came into the negotiations with our wish lists. Those wish lists were informed by our caucuses. Various caucuses wanted some of the same portfolios for different reasons. We really had to do a lot of bargaining. We had to do a lot of compromising across the board. Lots of concessions were given by all the various parties. I'm really excited that we finally at this point. At some point, it didn't look like we would get to this point. It says to me there's hope for South Africa. And I believe that what we will do with this multi-party government here in Johannesburg will serve as an example to the rest of the country as to what is possible under coalition governance, as we believe 2024 will probably look the same.
In a way, Govan, what has happened now is not what had been predicted by various pundits out there, in that there is no Herman Mashaba in this multi-party mayoral committee. There is no John Moody as well, as had been anticipated by some. But you're hearing talk, aren't you, about the possibility of a deputy mayor position being created in Joburg?
We've confirmed now that that was one of the demands of Action SA for the creation of that deputy mayor's position. It needs consultation from Lebogang Maile as well as Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the national COCTA minister, and her counterpart at the Gauteng government. So at this point, there's no indication that it will happen. But we understand that the demand for that position is to give Herman Mashaba that position within the city of Johannesburg. Similarly, within Action SA, to Lasizwe, we're hearing that both John Moody and Herman Mashaba and Michael Beaumont would prefer to be conducting oversight and making sure that these MMCs are performing in all 3 metros across Gauteng. So that's the state of play at the moment. We understand that the reason why we haven't got a date or time for that multi-party coalition committee briefing to announce the formal coalition is because they're still talking about some of these issues. And of course, while they've announced the MMC positions, there are 17 chairpersons of oversight committee positions that are up for grab. Mpho Phalatse admits that there's discontent within the DA's Johannesburg caucus over how these MMC positions have been allocated, and that discontent will only fester more as these chairpersons of oversight committee positions are announced. And while all of this is going on, we understand Action SA hasn't given up on its demand for a deputy mayor's position within the Johannesburg City Council. So the talks are continuing, but there is some headway. One has to assume that much of the pressure that was applied to get these announcements of MMC comes from the ANC, which had threatened court action in Ekurhuleni. That was avoided when Tanya Campbell announced her mayoral committee. And in the city of Johannesburg, Johannesburg had been scathing in the criticism of service delivery failures that the ANC says were happening in Soweto. So now Mpho Phalatse can go on the ground with her team and begin to work, but in the background, the negotiations continue, particularly as crucial positions still need to be discussed.
Lastly then, Govan, I know you've been tracking this quite closely. You've talked about Tanya Campbell. Now Mpho Phalatse has done her part, and I believe that Mogale City as well is done and dusted. What about Randall Williams in the city of Tshwane? Do you know how far we are from hearing from him, who is going to be part of the core leadership of the city?
Well, we have an indication of what that government will look like as well. The contentious issue there is that of Abel Tau. You'd remember him. He was the former chief whip of the Democratic Alliance in the Tshwane Council. He left the DA with Herman Mashaba. Now he's in charge of Action SA in the Tshwane Council, and the DA will have to give him an MMC position in that city. They're arguing at the moment about which position that will be. Will it be infrastructure? Will it be roads? Or will it be a department that's much less important to the Democratic Alliance's leadership over this coalition government? But we do understand that the allocation of portfolios is at an advanced stage in the Tshwane Council, in the Tshwane Mayoral Committee, Action SA, the Democratic Alliance, and the Freedom Front Plus, an ACDP, set to get important positions there. Remember, the Freedom Front Plus has been in that coalition council for the last term as well, so it would hope to retain that position. And then similarly, the chairpersons of the oversight committees would be where we see the rest of this coalition government finding their leadership. And I know it's too early to speculate at this stage, but now that we know which 4 partners are in the Johannesburg Council, I think we can get an idea of who the other 6 partners are. Likely to be the Freedom Front Plus, as we know they're a long-time ally of the Democratic Alliance, the African Transformation Movement, which has already been awarded a mayoral committee seat in Mogale City. And then we'll have to look towards parties such as Al Jamaa, which held its caucus over this weekend to decide whether or not it could switch allegiances over from the ANC to the DA. And we're looking at parties such as the AIC, which had held an MMC position in the city of Johannesburg, but could still return as chairpersons of committees. And then there's only 2 more to speculate about, Tulisi's, where I won't go that far trying to speculate about all 6. But I think at this point we do have an idea of what that government will look like.
We certainly are starting to get an idea. Govan Whittles, thank you for tracking that. That's eNCA's Govan Whittles out at the city of Joburg council chambers there, just taking us through some of the agreements that have been reached to form a government in this city, in Joburg, and what's still outstanding in as far as the city of Tshwane is concerned. To this now, the